Yeah.
Hope everybody's paying attention today because we have Jemmita calling in, and she is in Europe right now, and she is a shaman, a healer. She taps into the other side, and we're going to talk about some things that you may need to learn about. So welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
I am awesome, John. Thank you so much for having me on the show today. It's such an honor and a pleasure to be here with you. Thank you.
So people hear me talk about some of my things, and I don't talk about anything on the show unless I feel it. You know, being a clairsentient, someone having psychic abilities and understanding the quantum field. If someone's open enough, I can tell them who they are in 2 seconds. And then sometimes things just come out of my mouth. When I get around people, I just say things and wasn't even thought about. I was like, where did that come from? Jemmita has this special ability of understanding, I guess, what's going on with the body. And I told her I had this thing about this tingleness of my body. I was hot today. I was sweating, maybe I was healing. So I don't know if you can talk about that, or how would you want to start that conversation to kind of explain what's going on in the world right now?
Awesome. First of all, I'm so happy to be having this conversation, because when you ask me what's going on in the world right now, my instant answer to that is what's going on the level of energy, what's going on in the level of frequency, because all of that, everything, as we know, begins on the level of energy and frequency and then becomes manifest in the physical. And there is a lot going on in the world right now, but I'm always asking myself, what am I paying my attention to? Because as we know, wherever we put our attention is what we're going to create more of. And I think with all of the stuff that's going on in the 3D world right now, as all of the top-down structures and everything start to break down and can be a very unnerving and scary place for a lot of people to be at the moment, we can lose sight of what's really happening. And these times that we're in at the moment are absolutely, so many words, but none that could really describe the magnitude of what we're experiencing on this planet right now. And those of us that have chosen to be here at this time, to incarnate at this time, I think it's a very, very conscious choice, and actually a massive blessing, something that even though feels weird and tough at times, we need to remember to celebrate, because this time and space, this in the Andean traditions that I work with a lot, we call it the Tarapai Pacha. It's like the changing of the guard. It's a point of no return, as they say in the Hopi, legends, where we really are seeing a massive shift on the planet, a shift of awakening, a shift of remembering, of returning. For me, what I feel is happening with all of this, there's many things that are going on that are facilitating this process for us, that can feel odd, strange, intense, and also be clicking people over that haven't had any of the clair abilities before, clairvoyant, sentient, or cognizant, or clairaudient. Is that what I'm saying? Do I have the right word? Do you know what I'm saying? The four ways of perceiving. And as you mentioned, John, you're very clairsentient, so you feel. Clairvoyant, of course, is where you see. Clairaudient is where you hear. And claircognizant is just this knowing. And it's happening for people at the moment too that haven't had any or very little psychic ability or connection, or perhaps haven't found it that easy to tap into their intuition, where all of a sudden everything is just, the trapdoor is opening, it's exploding, and there's a lot of remembering, and the sensations can be very intense, especially if you're not used to it. So I'm not saying that's you in your case, but there will be people out there that all of a sudden are seeing, hearing, and feeling that haven't before. That in itself, it takes a while for the central nervous system to get online and get used to. So there can be feelings for some people, if there's anyone out there that's moving into that space or has felt themselves becoming more open, there can sometimes be a feeling of dissolution, like you're dissolving. And it's kind of like standing on the edge of an abyss where you're about to jump off, and you've forgotten in that moment that you actually have wings and you can fly. But at that point, you're like, what the hell? If I go over the edge, if I lose my mind, if these sensations continue to open up like this, what's going to happen? Am I, in our society that we live in, how will I be perceived? Will I be able to function? So there's all of these things that come up as that what I feel to be a dormant DNA strand in every human starts to wake up, and we are starting to operate not just as a third dimensional being, but we're now well and truly into the fourth and fifth dimensions, and we're going to go higher. And of course, those dimensions aren't somewhere else. They're not out there. It's not like the Earth's going to split in two, or maybe it will, who knows, but it's not that that's there and we're here. That reality, that frequency of the fifth dimension, which is very much more a frequency of the heart and being led by the wisdom of the heart with the mind as the humble, faithful servant, rather than the other way around like it's been for the last 5,000 years or so, is right here, right now. And it's something that we are cultivating and moving into. And there will get to be a point where the collective focus on that frequency will be so rich and so big that there will be a tipping point where, instead of the dominating frequency of the planet being this very third dimensional, top down, as I said, structures, very led by the head, by the mind, by ego, power, money, greed, all of the things of the old paradigm, that stuff will start to break down and crumble. And as that falls away, it can be terrifying. So you see, there's so much that's going on. So you've got the psychic senses activating, you've got all of this that we thought we knew all of a sudden crumbling down around us, leaving us feeling a lot of people feeling very ungrounded, uncentered, and not sure what to do, where to go. Then you've got the cosmic alignments that are happening. So we have more photonic light hitting this planet right now than we ever have had in measurable history. And that's not woo-woo, that's science. Like, you can jump on and look at NASA's website where they measure the M-class and the X-class flares at solar flares. And these solar flares didn't really kick off until about 2018. And we had a ton of them, of the X-class and the M-class solar flares. And then, interestingly enough, during 2020, they backed right off and there was hardly any. And then they kicked in again, and they have been particularly strong in this last year. And 2024, it was sort of prophesized that 2025 was going to be the big one, but I know that there was a shift in feeling around that for many people, that 2024, this year of the dragon, was really going to be the one where there was a massive shift of consciousness, because we're also, along with all of that, it's all catapulting us into what is called the age of Aquarius. And by September of this year, we will be fully in Aquarius for like the next 20 years or so. I'm not an astrologer, so I can't give you the specifics, but I can tell you about the energetics.
But if we're going into Aquarius for a long time, what if you are Aquarius? Does that mean anything?
Oh, if you are an Aquarius, well, I think it really depends not just on your sun sign, which is the sign you were born under, but you want to have a look at somebody like Pam Gregory is an amazing person because to check out those astrologies. Because she has a free chart, I know, that you can download online, and you can see where your different planets fall, and you can also see when these big cosmic alignments. What I love about Pam too is she's not only talking about the traditional astrology, she talks a lot about the photonic light, which is what I'm sharing with you about now. Because if you can imagine, again, when those solar flares hit Mother Earth, or Pachamama as I would call her, again, measurably, the Schumann resonance of the Earth has changed. So the frequency, the electromagnetic measurable field of energy of the Earth changes measurably every time one of those solar flares or the photonic light from the center of the cosmos beam like a laser and hit this planet. So it's only sense, it's only common sense. Like, I look at it like we are like the circuit breakers, or we're like the power board inside of our house. And if that got struck by lightning, then the circuits would blow. And that is kind of the intensity of what is happening for us as the Earth is receiving more light. And why are we receiving more light now? Because in that light, in that photonic light, are codes of information. codes of remembering, codes of divinity. There is wisdom and intelligence in that light that comes from the source of our galactic center, the source of our cosmic center, where we have all originated from. And if you look at any indigenous tradition in the world, it doesn't matter whether it's Celtic, whether it's Andean, whether it's Native American, whatever, it all traces back to the lineage of our ancestors being from the stars. Scientifically, if you break down the molecules in our body, we're made up as the same thing as stardust. So we carry a divine intelligence, a divine remembering that I think over the cycles of life in the 3D on this planet and unfolding of events that have had to be in the way that they've had to be to get us to where we are right now, return to that original blueprint. We return to that original remembering while we're still in the skin suit, while we're still in the human body, without having to leave to remember. When we first arrive, we can talk about that in a minute if you like. I believe we come in remembered, but then there's a dispersal of energy when we first arrive. There's like a splat, and in that moment we forget, and then the journey begins of remembering. So just circling back to how that can be affecting, like in your case, you were talking about the energy that's coming from your hands. Well, you and I are very similar there, because for me too, it has been unbelievable activation of the energy in the hands. And for me, it really started about 2017, 2018 is when it first started to come in. The hands and a new ray of light, this aquamarine blue, started to come through my hands, which is why I found and went in search of these crystals, because they remind me continuously about working with this energy in the work that I do. And I was taught along the way from different masters. I'm talking about what we call Newsters, goddesses that arrive out of lakes, and I'm very connected shamanically to these seen and unseen beings of the natural world, and they are my teachers. So I was shown over time how to work with this energy. And then in January, it was January 15 this year to be exact, I started waking up in the middle of the night with my hands in the strangest locked-in mudras, to the point where my little finger was almost dislocating from the joint, and it was laying flat against this hand, and my hands would be in these like really weird locked in positions. And actually I was waking up sore because of the intensity of these positions. And, you know, the mind wants to rule out all of the human things, right? So, you know, you check in to see if you're deficient in anything, your health, everything's good, there's no problem, nothing's wrong, you know, and it's happening every single night. What I would notice would be when I was in ceremony, when I'm working in the temples, in the mountains, or facilitating ceremony, it would go away. So I'm like, okay, well, I knew clearly that something was happening on the level of energy. And I was in a temple one night, and I was right in the center of this cave. Like, you've never seen anything like this place. It's like something out of Lord of the Rings. It's in Bali, the biggest cave you've ever seen in your life. And there's a chamber inside a chamber right in the center of the cave. And so I'm there meditating, and I hear clearly, meditate on your hands, focus on your hands. And the more I did, the more everything dissolved around me. There was a total dissolution of ego, a dissolution of all, but all I could feel and tune into was this photonic energy that was coming out of the hands. So fast forward a little bit up until just a couple of weeks ago, and when I'm in Peru, and I've just had a group there of 25 people for 20 days, and I was noticing that every day the hands were getting, at night it was stopping, until eventually I got to a place called Tiwanaku. Tiwanaku is in Bolivia, close to Lake Titicaca. It's one of the oldest sites on the planet. And what is incredible about this place, it used to be on the shore of Lake Titicaca. Now it's about 4 or 5 kilometres back from the shore of the lake. Lake Titicaca, a lot of people don't know this, used to be at sea level. So there is a species of seahorse in Lake Titicaca that's exactly like a saltwater seahorse, except it's adapted over the millennia to breathe and be in fresh water. So this temple of Tiwanaku is very, very profound and I guess famous for being one of the temples of the Lemurian masters, where the ancient Atlantean and Lemurian masters, these civilizations, these like highly advanced awakened civilizations existed, pre-flood, how many thousands of years ago. And this, what's famous particularly about this temple is there's a temple there called the Temple of the Ancestors. And when you go into this subterranean, it's below the earth temple, there are hundreds of faces carved into the walls that look like, it's crazy. You're in the Andes and you have Chinese, Japanese, Caucasian, alien, African, you've got every nationality on the planet in a time where people apparently weren't traveling, represented in this Temple of Ancestors, and not only carved into the walls, the faces, relics and artifacts from these places that are, I mean, they could not be from the Andes because the whole culture and the way of making their ceramics and everything at that time were completely different. So what you're meant to do when you go in this Temple of the Ancestors is you take a walk around it a few times and you stop in front of the being of the face that calls you. And when you stand in front of it, you introduce yourself, you say hello, and you receive. You meditate and you receive the wisdom that is there for you from this ancient master. For me, I was called to go directly to a monolith standing in the center of the Temple of Tiwanaku. And this being is a being called Huiracocha. Huiracocha is the Andean creator god. It's the cosmic mother, cosmic father. Huira is the vitality. It's like in the Andes, that's the fat that they use of the llama and the alpaca. Cocha is the water. So it's the vitality of the water. It's our original origins. They also call this god the cosmic gardener, or the sun god. So for me, that's where I was called. I sat in front and I opened my mesa, my medicine bundle, which is my altar that I work with, and I heard clearly, hold up your hands. So I held up my hands and wow, what was happening? I couldn't even force my hands into the positions that they were going. They were bending all the way backwards. It was really interesting because when you see ancient dancing, you often see these movements, these kind of mudras, in the Balinese culture, it's very much about the hands and they train their hands to go into these crazy positions. This was happening for me. And there was a complete and full or a completion of the activation, I would say, of this, I keep calling it photonic energy because I don't know why, that's how it comes through for me, that is now
it's
kind
stellar
of...
energy.
Or stellar energy.
Scalar.
Yeah.
Scalar light.
Scalar light, yeah. That's ready to be worked with and ready to be used. And the instruction was very clear. But the thing is, I had to go through, and I think we all do, we move through these processes because there's two ways of learning this stuff. There's someone showing you and there's remembering. And someone can show you, like anyone can go and do a Reiki course, for example, and learn the symbols or, whatever it is they do and learn how to move the energy. Anyone can do that. But there's something profound that happens when there's a true remembering and when it comes from within. This is the way for me that I love to learn and receive. And this is the way that I love to help others learn and receive too, because then it's embodied and it's not something someone can teach you. So it's like you receive the sensation, you receive the energy, you receive the messages that come along with it. And then it's up to you to decode it over time. And how do you do that? Well, for me, I ask to be shown and shown clearly. So it will come through in my dreams. It comes through in synchronicities. It's kind of like a choose your own adventure novel. You got to stay super awake, super aware, dialed in, switched on and watch and not dismiss anything as not being possible, not dismiss anything as being, oh, I'm making that up. I think that's the biggest way that people chop themselves off or hold themselves back from stepping into their intuitive gifts, is because they think that.
I just want to touch on that because I can relate to that as understanding, Reiki. Understanding Reiki, I felt like Reiki is a club, because when I walked in and did Reiki with this Reiki master, I was able to project energy 10 feet away through your heart chakra. I can project it through your heart chakra, your crown chakra, or your left hand. Has entry points of for me to give people energy. I was able to do Reiki immediately, right? So I understand what you're saying. It's a little different, especially in this space, because I've been around a lot of people, people who called themselves shamans, when I wasn't dialed into this, could never read me really. And, I was in LA and was around celebrities, and my buddy Eric Neese, he was in this world, met a lot of people. And then I was the last person to even think about this. And then all of a sudden this shows up. And then I find out, a little bit of my lineage is I'm a descendant of W.T. Whitaker, which was a Cherokee chief in Oklahoma. Hearing you talk about this thing finding you, there's a lot of people in this space, but when something finds you within, it's a different narrative. It's real. And I look at some of these people in the space, I don't know, it may not be as real as they want to say they are or want to be. You know what I'm saying? Does that make sense?
It really makes sense. Yeah. It's a walking your talk. For me, the key to all of it is your communion. That like any relationship that you want to build in your life, whether it's, a business relationship, a personal relationship, a friendship, whatever it is, it takes work. It takes commitment. It takes consistency. It takes a willingness to, sometimes show up when you don't feel like it, and this is really, for me, I don't call myself a shaman very much, only because it is such a loaded word. But really, it's really hard for me when people say, what do you do? So what do you do? I'm like, well, I facilitate really deeply transformational spaces for people, working with the guardians of nature. It's like, it's shamanic work is the work that I've been doing for the last 13 years or more now. And how is that work so powerful and how is it so authentic is that there is no separation between formal ceremony and the ceremony that is my life. So I'm sure, in your ancestral roots and for the First Nations people, particularly that are living in traditional ways, or in any country in the world, and it doesn't matter what tradition it's from, there's this consistent communion and connection with the beings of nature and the beings of the unseen world. It's building a relationship. And it's going to come through differently for different people, and there's no right or wrong way. It's just that we all perceive energy and feel and understand energy differently. And eventually, I think over time, everything opens up, but there's also a big rush. For me, I served a very traditional apprenticeship into the sacred medicines in Peru over years, and I was initiated with particular into a lineage, and it's not to say that you have to do things that way, but when you do things that way, you have the backing of a team. And I'm not just talking about a team in this realm. You've got ancestors, medicine men, medicine women. For me, my strongest team are my mountains. We call them apus. The animal allies that I work with, the elementals, the nustas, which are the feminine energies of the springs, the lakes, the rivers. These beings have everything that we need because they're aspects of us also. And when we develop and strengthen that relationship with them, they teach you. Right. So there's this beautiful combination, this merging, this flourishing, flowering, blossoming of you in your physical being, your soul, your essence, which is like your higher self, your spirit, that is playing and listening and learning and dancing and merging consistently with the spirits of the mountains, with the spirits of the earth, and every earth that you go to has a different spirit. We have Mother Earth, Pachamama, who's actually Pacha means time and space. So Pachamama actually means the mother of time and space. She's the cosmic mother as well as the earth mother. But every land that you go to has a different earth spirit. So here, before we opened up our interview today, I called in my guardians, I called in my mountains, I called in my animal allies, I called in the elements, and I called in the Pachamama of this land that I'm on right here, right now, to support me in this beautiful interview with you, that whatever comes through is what's needed for the people that are listening. So you see, you take yourself out of the way. It's not all about, for me, and I'm sure for you too, John, we're taking part, but it's not coming through the filter of the mind or through the ego. It's flowing through like an instrument that's being played by the divine. And that can only come not through going and being taught a technique. It can only come through the power of communion, the consistent power of prayer, and the willingness to develop, these relationships. Everything's on fast track now. What
do you think about the stones responding?
Oh, yes. I can't even. It's something.
I wear a moldavite. I usually wear a moldavite, but I took it off just to give it a rest.
Yeah.
So what do you think about the stones?
Stones are my thing. They are my main. The sacred mesa, we call it a mesa or mastai. This is the bundle that I work with. I have a few of them programmed with different programs. This is all stones. They're all stones in here. Some crystals, some sacred objects. But the stones, to me, it's just obvious. The stones are the oldest living beings on the planet. And they have collected and gathered the wisdom from across the ages. And we call them kuyas, the stones. A kuya is a healing stone, or more specifically, a master of living energy, a master of healing energy. And just like with the mountains and with the guardians that I'm sharing with you about, when you speak to the stones on a regular basis, one day the stone will speak back. And the way that I work with them in my medicine bundle is the guardians that I was sharing with you about before. For example, the mountains. I have 4 major mountains. I have many, but there's 4 major ones that I work with. And they are programmed into stones that sit in my medicine bundle that are on the 4 cardinal directions, the suyus that we call them, east, south, north, west. And they stand there with the stone, programmed into the stone. So you have the quality of the stone, the wisdom of the stone, with the wisdom of the mountain of the Apu, and they act like the security guards. Why? Because I'm always existing in sacred space. We all are. And we are always in the holograph of the cross of the north, the south, the east, and the west, no matter where we are. And there's always energies arriving to us from each one of those directions, each one of those portals. There's energies from what's happening on the earth. There's energies when we sleep in the etheric realms, in all dimensions. And so those stones and those apus act like my security guards. They filter the energies. This is why if someone comes to sit with me in a ceremonial space, it's tight. Like there is nothing getting into that space. The space is clean, clear, protected, tight. Not because of me, it's because of the way that I commune with the guardians and how the space is set up and orchestrated by me in communion with these energies. So the stones are absolutely the cornerstone, pardon the pun, of the foundation of everything. And the crystals have a different frequency again, because a crystal cannot hold heavy energy. It's impossible. Crystals don't need cleansing. If a crystal has had enough, it will break. Blessing is a whole other thing. Activating, yes, but cleansing and cleaning, no. Because crystals have this phenomenal innate ability to take any energy, whatever arrives to them. They don't say, yes, that's good. No, that's not. Oh, only give me the heavy energy or only give me the light. It's like, bring it on. Whatever it is, bring it. And as soon as it hits the surface of the crystal, it's instantly transformed into the highest frequencies of love and the highest frequencies of light, and it's refracted and reflected out. So we need to know ourselves as the crystal, because that's the truth of who we really are. We're crystalline beings, and we have that ability to transform energy in that way, which is why we take on so much stuff. You know, we're like, why am I so sensitive? Why do I take on everyone's stuff? Because you know you can. Because you know in your fullest power, you can suck that energy in, transform it, and send it back out as blessings. We don't need to give it to the earth to transform. She's got enough to do. We don't need to send it off somewhere else. We can do it. But to do that, to be in the power of that, we have to be conscious. Most of the time, we're walking around unconscious. We're walking around off our center, thrown off, and we're vulnerable. We lose parts of our soul to different dimensions and realms when we've experienced trauma of any kind, and nobody taught us how to do soul retrievals for ourselves, let alone for anyone else. So when we're not fully complete within ourselves, we are vulnerable, and that's when we fall prey to heavy energies.
What do you think about, well, I want to go back to something you said about the four, because I had this rationale that there's two mindsets in the world. There's two mindsets. There's a discovery mindset, which is 99% of the population, right? Then there's a creation mindset. So if you understand creation, you can get to an answer quicker. If you have a discovery mindset, it's going to take you longer to find that answer. And I've always said this. So I come up with this philosophy. I'm a pure source expert, and I've been educated through social media, understanding human behavior. So I had this rationale. I came up with this process how to rebirth or birth anything the right way. This process could be used for your life, for a business, whatever. And it uses data based on human behavior. So this creation of four came to me, and I said, the Creator created everything in fours, and it's linear. I knew the universe was in four parts. And then I talked to this guy who translated the Theoba prophecy, and he said God created the universe with four powers. So now let's take the universe. Now let's go to the planetary system. Let's go to 4 terrestrial planets, 4 gas planets. You're moving parts, and I think this, to me, I think the Asiatics in India, they misinterpreted a couple things on this, because, and then of course NASA, whatever they interprets what they interpret. But the moving parts were the sun, the moon, and Pluto, because the gases, right, we're supposed to represent the 4 gas planets, represents the sense of the gases around the human body, right? The 4 terrestrial planets. So if you align this creation, right, you go, the sun is the root chakra, was Mercury, Venus, Earth is the heart chakra, Mars, throat chakra, the moon is the third eye, and Pluto is the crown chakra, because it's on the edge. Now let's go to the Earth, right? The Earth is in 4 parts: inner core, outer core, mantle, crust. There's 4 directions. You're made of 4 humors. There's 4 parts to the brain. There's 4 parts to the heart, right? And this is where I want to tie it all the way to the body. And this is just a rationale. I've never read this, and this has never really been identified, I don't think. So if you look at creation of four, and you follow that process, and then sidebar, being linear, they say that Antarctica is the crown chakra of Earth. What's the coldest place on Earth? Antarctica. What's the coldest place in our planetary system? Pluto, right? That's just a sidebar. But when you understand your pineal gland, and when I started looking at the pineal gland, and I realized that that's God's data center. That's the Creator's data center. And then when I realized that, when you look at the bone and you look at the symbol the Egyptians made, and you take that bone of the pineal gland and you put it on a flat surface, that's a 1/4 slant, all the way from 4 powers creation. Because if you understood creation from the 4 powers to the pineal gland in the human body, you can determine everything that humanity has done wrong if you understand that creation. That's just a rationale. I'm still exploring that. I know my process works because I've utilized it with social media, and there's nobody doing that, understanding pure source and reverse engineering pretty much everything. Have you ever heard anything about creation of 4?
Yes. Well, again, I not so much put in that way of creation of 4.
And being linear.
Being linear. So in the Andean tradition, there is, normally I'm wearing it, but I was just looking for it and I haven't got it. It's called the Chana. And the Chana is the Andean cross, and it really is the creation of four. So within that symbol of the Chana, it represents the entire multiverse. It represents creation, it represents the earth, it represents the guiding forces, even the guiding principles. So, for example, the four guiding principles are what's called Fiache, Yankai, Munne, and Kausei. So we have Kausei, which is, and there's these four guiding principles relate to the four parts of the cross, to the four directions. They also relate to four what we call pokpos. Pokpos are like chakras, I guess you could say, but there's not seven like there is in the Vedic system. They encompass like the Kausei Pokpo, the first Pokpo, encompasses what we would know to be the root and the sacral. So like the womb space, the hara, the root is in the first Pokpo. And this Pokpo Kausei literally means vitality, living energy, life force energy, prana, chi. It's the energy that's available in everything, but it's also sexual energy, sensual energy, it's kundalini. And interestingly, that Pokpo was forgotten about for hundreds and hundreds of years in the Andes after the conquistadors, the Spanish colonized, and people took things into hiding. It was with the whole arrival of Catholicism and all of the things, that was not to be spoken about, that Pokpo, because that was direct connection to life force energy, vitality, which is also sexuality. So this is the first guiding essence, the first energy center of the body. And interestingly, the element is not earth as it is in the Vedic system, it's fire. Because fire brings the vitality, fire brings the nourishment. Fire also has the ability to transform any of the trauma or heavy, the memory that's carried in that first energy center. The second one, the Yankai Pokpo, which is the essence that sits on the north in the area of the cross of the Andean Chicana, of the Chicana, the Cruz del Sur, the cross. The reason it's called the cross is because it's based on the Southern Cross constellation, which is visible in, of course, the southern skies. I'm not sure if you see it at all in the north, but it's very visible in the. I grew up in Australia, so I grew up with it as our main constellation as well. And that constellation, it was said, taught, and same in the traditions of the First Nations Australian people, that constellation taught them. It was like a road map, a geographical map of how everything was to be lived whilst here on Pachamama, with the cosmos as a guide, so that the earth became like a geographical reflection or a map of this. And if it was lived in that way, then there was harmony, right? We were in harmony with the earth, we were in harmony with each other. So you have this Yankai Pokpo, which is at the kind of solar plexus. This is all about our service. It's what we came here to be, what we came here to share, our sacred work. It's also our connection to the earth and our connection to each other. The element is earth. Then in the heart, we have the Munne Pokpo. Munne means universal love, unconditional love, and also it means joy. It translates to blissfulness and joy as well as love. That's the air element. And then you have the Yachai Pokpo, which is all about divine intelligence and wisdom. This is encompasses the third eye in the crown. And interestingly, the element here is water. Why? Because that's how our thoughts should be. Not static, not rigid, not stuck, but forever flowing and able to move freely through the body. So this is in the Andean cosmovision. You see these fours, and then you have the four animals, the puma, the serpent, the condor, and the ente, the hummingbird. Each horizontal line on the Chicana represents space, and each vertical line represents time, and there are four and four and four and four. There are four on each side. So the rule of fours in creation, and I live most of the year on the island of Bali. And again, you have an acute awareness of the people there, of the four. They always know where they are in time and space. They always know which direction the east is in. They always know which element is arriving to them there. They always know which one of the four main gods are arriving to them there. Like there's this consistent awareness of, for me, the creation of four is like walking around all the time, not just in formal ceremonial spaces or in facilitated spaces, but always knowing and feeling that you are inside of this holographic four, this holographic cross, and everything that comes along, the essences and everything that are with it. And for me and for the people that I work with too, when you really start to get that, things really change. As you were saying, I mean, for you, you've incredibly brought through something that, like almost like a formula, like a creation formula that works, which is incredible.
Well, let me tell you one other thing. When you think about law of attraction, in this process of creating a pure source, and you understand the non-conscious, people don't talk about the non-conscious. You have environment, you have the non-conscious, right? Your emotions haven't kicked in yet. And the non-conscious is the beginning. This is how you reset life. When you understand that, our birthday, and you know this, our birthday, or when we're born, all that, using feng shui, it gives us our directions. So if we know this information, when someone is born and you understand the environment, right, the evolutionists put them in the right position within that environment. That is your environment to non-conscious. Now here's the kicker. I think my mentality operates on a new world of physics that's not even discussed, which is the quantum field. The Newtonian model of reality is behind the curve. Oppenheimer and Einstein weren't that smart. So when you understand that and you understand non-conscious and environment, now let's go to science today, and we break the code where science only makes their mathematical decisions are made off environment and your non-conscious, which is your foundation. They never use the third part, the sensibilities, the esoteric, whatever, which the new level of physics, right? If you understand the new level of physics, you can plug in the third part of law of attraction and get the right answers. So the answers science has been giving us all this time and wonder why we've been hijacked. They're only using two parts of law of attraction because law of attraction melds life. And to me, life is about sensitivities and percentages.
I love this. It's so beautiful. I'm feeling this as you share it. And for me, I'm always coming back to the ancient future wisdom. Every time I visit and spend time in these temples of the ancient masters, this stuff is coded in there. You see it in the carvings, in the monoliths. There's a place right near Tiwanaku called Pumapunku, which I'm pretty sure that one of the Gaia, like Ancient Aliens or something, has done a documentary on. And this entire place is strewn with these H-shaped monoliths, portals, that they still now have been trying to figure out how they were able to cut these angles with such laser-like precision, because honestly, the rock has been melted. It hasn't been cut. You can see it's otherworldly, and they still can't replicate it now. But the thing that's really powerful for me here, beyond even the technology that they were harnessing, is this as above, so below. Every portal has an exact mirror on the other side, and there's clues everywhere in how to access the quantum field, how to really, really work with the law of attraction, if we're calling it that, or whatever it might be. And it's through the communion and the connection, it's the reminder, and really you can travel, if you're open and you're willing to open yourself to it, you can travel into these high dimensional states where you are existing on a parallel timeline, and you can receive all the information and wisdom you receive, but you can also totally redirect the course of what's happening here and now, manifest whatever it is that you are needing or wanting to call in. And if you've got a massive group of people that all know how to do this together, then you're working with something that is way beyond, I think, what most people are really even able to wrap their head around in this moment in time. So for me, what's so precious about these ancient places is not about looking to the past. It's about, for me, remembering and realizing that these masters coded these things there for us to receive now, so it's like it can come through, like for some people like yourself and for all of us in our different ways, it's going to come through anyway. But when you go in, and it's like if you're the key to the lock, then what comes through is it can just boom, boom, boom. It's like sitting in front of a cosmic encyclopedia. And I always
I don't know where these. I've read one book and half the Bible. I don't know where these rationales came from.
They're coming from source.
Yeah, I mean, I was told my bloodline was from John the Baptist too.
Wow. Yeah, possible. Of course. I mean, that's something to explore for sure. But I think that the thing for me is, I don't know. I think over the years, with all of the things that have shown up for me, I approach them all with a lot of, hopefully, with a lot of humility, with a lot of curiosity, and with a lot of, I think curiosity is the thing, and being open to be shown and ask to be shown clearly, because we are tapping it, and it's happening for so many people more and more now.
Your connection to Scandinavia?
Yeah,
I know you have a connection. I can see that.
Definitely.
Scandinavian. That's where they engineered the world. I just think skin color changed, and I think the Egyptians are the Native Americans. I just think the Scandinavians are the Egyptians and all the But I just think their skin color changed as they got closer to the equator.
Yeah. Well, this can be a bit of a delicate thing to share, but I'll share it because it's what happened. It's what came through. I landed in the Andes in 2012, January 2012. As a tourist, I wasn't going looking for anything. I had a Colombian partner at the time. We had been in Colombia. He wanted to go and work with some medicine in Peru. And so I said yes, and I went. And it was like the minute my feet touched the tarmac in Cusco, I was flooded with emotion and flooded with remembering. And it just took me by surprise. I wasn't expecting it. And not long after that, I met my first maestro. That's a whole other story in itself, which is really phenomenal how I met him, but maybe for another time. I met my first maestro, and then very soon after that, I met my second teacher, who I'm still, and I teach alongside him now, which is such an honor. It's really beautiful. And he threw the coca, the leaves, the oracle, and he's like, let's check this again. And he looks again, and he's like, He said, my dear, don't let that blonde hair and blue eyes fool you. These are your mountains. You're a medicine woman, and you need to come back here as soon as you can, and I'm going to train you. So my heart just exploded with joy. It was like, and he said to me just recently, he said, you embody these traditions more than most locals that I know. He said, it's in you. It's in your blood and your bones, which is weird because I am a blonde-haired, blue-eyed Australian woman with Scandinavian ancestry. So 13 years, I've been going every single year, living there and taking people other than the year of the pandemic. And in this last group, I took them to a portal called Pacha. Pacha, if you remember me saying before, means time and space. This place is literally a cockpit of a flight, like it looks like the cockpit of a spacecraft, right? The Spanish tried to bomb it and they couldn't even move the rock. And I was sitting in that portal, and for me, the portal of Pacha is Cosmic University. And when I go in there, I meet the masters, and they just, whatever questions I have about anything, if I've been having the downloads and whatever, I can go in and ask for refinement, and they give me boom, 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 what I need to know. And I said to them, one question, why does it feel like this lineage is in my blood and my bones when I'm clearly my blood and my bones? For me, there's the lineage of the blood and bones, there's the soul ancestry, there's the star ancestry. But I'm like, why does it feel like it's in my blood and my bones? And they said to me, because it's not that you've had a past life here. You were one of the original, as we was, this might sound right now, you were one of the original star elder beings that seeded this wisdom. And what's really interesting is in the Andean legends and prophecies, like often when I'm in the mountains and I come down after a day of being in the mountains, the people in the communities are like, oh, because in their legends, they're the ones that they interbred with and interacted with that came from the Star Nations looked like me. It was such a moment of, oh, okay, it just made complete sense to me, because whenever I'm, interacting in those sacred spaces and in those temples, it's very, very grounded to the earth. It's all of that beautiful lineage over the years of the interweaving of that cosmic ancestry with the earth. But in their creation stories, and same in Bolivia, there was a merging of these very tall, fair-eyed, fair-haired celestial beings that merged with the ancient Andean.
When I've been in front of someone with this pale skin, blue eyes, when I've put my hands up, it's happened twice. The energy would just, and these people would be like, please stop. The energy would be so strong when I'd get around those types of people. I've had to experience twice what that was. I don't know if you've ever experienced anything like that, but like the level of energy when I give to people, depending on who it is, there's different intensity. It's
how, first of all, I just have to say, I cannot wait to meet you in person, John. It's going to be fun. I would love to.
You had to teach me a lot, because I don't know how to translate this stuff the right way. You know what I'm saying? I just put it out there.
You're doing such a great job. It's really beautiful. It's really interesting. I was talking to somebody, I was on a podcast just recently, and they had a totally different audience. It was actually a really beautiful experience for me, because the lady was like, okay, so most of the people, there's 3.5 million people listening to this, and they don't know anything. Like they're only just on the precipice of even learning how to listen to their heart. And it's so beautiful to be brought back to those spaces, because, we forget, I know I do anyway, just how far we've come, and it's not, I say to people too, this journey is a lifetime's journey. It's this journey of remembering and awakening. We need to see it, I think, like a delicious adventure novel that's constantly unfolding. We can't skip steps. Sometimes it will happen, things are going to come really quick, and then other times it's about continuing to just diligently, with joy, with curiosity, with awareness, walk. And then when something opens to you and you get given a gift, you get given a download, you get given a whatever. I have this little saying that I say that I'm stoked but not surprised. So it's like, thank you, and the more we say thank you for these things that arrive to us, the more they give us, right? Because they're like, okay, she's ready, I'm going to give her more. And I had an experience, again, this is something I haven't really shared So I'm sharing it with you because I think you're open to hearing it and your listeners will be too. But, I work in the unseen worlds, as do you. And I see and I hear and I feel and I know, and those senses have become stronger and they're getting stronger all the time because I listen and because I say thank you and because I watch and I'm open to receiving. Like if you were to share that energy with me, I would love it because I'm open to receiving it. And I always say to people too, when we're offering our healing in whatever way that looks, or our energy, just digressing for a minute, the biggest thing that we need to get over as healers or facilitators or whatever label you want to give yourself around it, is that we can never be responsible for how the other person is going to pick it up. We can only ever offer our impeccable best with all our heart, and that is enough. Because a lot of people that come in with healing gifts or that want to follow the path of a healer and go, looking to learn how to unlock those gifts within themselves, often we come in with a program, I believe, that we're responsible for everybody else's healing and happiness. And if it doesn't work, we've failed, right? And that's a heavy one to carry. This is why so many people that are wanting to work in service in that way get drained, because they're like, they're trying to help that person so much. But if the person's not ready or willing to receive it, you're just going to exhaust yourself. You have to know that what you've given is exactly what they needed, and then they're going to go away and integrate that in the way that their soul is ready for, in the way that they need. And if it doesn't look like what you want it to look like, you've got to be okay with that.
I'll tell you one more little story. Can I tell you one more?
Please. I'm loving it. Mm-hmm.
Low-level energy. When I did this meditation, I was in Curacao this year, and I did this meditation. And I think Curacao is a portal. I think if you look at the foundation there, I think it's some of the densest areas in the world. Could be the center, could be the beginning. I don't know. It's the only place in the world that has no hurricanes in that area. So for ABC Islands. Anyway, so when people have trauma and they have through their life, and your subconscious is being programmed at early years of your life, these low-level entities attach to you. So my cousin shows up to Curacao, had a lot of trauma, been molested by these pastors and different things, and just some very bad stuff. So the first 2 days me and him were together, I would just say stuff, and I don't even know where it came from. It was just blah, blah. And he was very defensive. We didn't get along those first 2 days. So then when we did this meditation, he says, when I do these meditations, he says, I see a portal. I see a hole. I see this thing that I can go into. I said, I want to try to do this. So he's sitting over here. I'm meditating here. And we get into this, and he says, I'm in. And he says, yeah, my spirit guide's talking to me. And I had this weird feeling about it. I started thinking to myself, I almost in somewhat of a telepathy way, I said, what is your name? What is your name? And he was able to tap into this, and he could repeat what this thing was saying. I just felt weird. And at one point he said, come over here and grab my hand. They wants to lock in, because I think she was trying to transmit from him through me, right? This entity, whatever it was. So that didn't work or whatever. So we're sitting there, we're meditating, he's talking, and he's saying, this thing's telling me my spirit guide. And I said, something's wrong. I said, what does this thing look like? And he said, it looked like a mummy. I said, oh, shit, it looked like a mummy. So somehow I was able to tap into and communicate with this entity that's attached to him, right? And he would repeat what this entity was saying. And I kept saying, what is your name? What is your name? What is your name? And then finally she said her name, and then she got very defensive. And she's like, I'm a 1,000-year-old deity. I'm more powerful than you. And I just thought to myself, I said, no, you're not. Mentally, I'm not saying a word, and we're communicating back and forth. And then finally she got very defensive, and then she was gone. She's like, I got to go. She left. Next day, woke up. The energy between me and my cousin was completely different. So when I experienced that, and understand that if you're bringing lineage, and I understand the Akashic records and all that, you're bringing lineage to the table, and let's say this lineage has trauma, and then that lineage experiences trauma. It's like opening a wound, right? It's reopening that wound because it hasn't been dealt with. So these low-level entities are low-level entities for a reason. They're trying to find someone that is similar to them they can attach to, and that's what feed them. So when you understand that like fear and darkness is a very weak source of energy, because anything is a fraction of anything created by source is a fraction of source. So if you give it that energy, that's what it has. So in a way, you could almost systematically, if I was able to figure that out, I could systematically meet with people, jerk these entities out of people, and change their lives. I'm not sure how to do it, but I think there's something to that, and I think that may represent what, I call sometimes the Bible a Disney movie, when they infatuate all these things. But I think somehow that's basically what they're saying, heaven and hell, right? So I think there's something to that. We could if we could figure that out, we could get all these low-level energies out of divine people that want to, right? Very easily. I need help with that.
You know who I think had that figured out? JC.
Who's that?
Jesus Christ. He had that figured out as an ascended master. I'll tell you why I say that. Because as you were sharing that, I was following that process, and everything that if you had have asked me, what would you have done in that situation? Everything that you went through was exactly how I would have dealt with that situation in a way. Lower frequency energies, if we don't give them any power or any label, right? We just look at energy, that there are two frequencies of energy. There is heavy and there is light, right? In the Andes, we call it hucha is the heavy energy. Sami is the light. So there's no good or bad or right or wrong. Even the heavy energies, which includes the entities of a lower frequency, are ultimately in service to the light. Heavy energies have arisen originally from the light, right? So they are working their way back to returning to their true nature, just as everything does. But their service along the way, their purpose along the way, is to create contrast for the being that is choosing to take them on. Right. So whether that is through traumas, whether that's through hard processes, whether that's through consciously or unconsciously doing or acting or in a certain way that allows these energies to attach, they put the person into a process that forces an awakening to happen on some level. People start to realize, why am I behaving that way? Why do I react all the time? Is this really me? And then they even start to question their belief systems. They start to question their past, their lineage. They start to question these things that I think and feel about myself and the world. Do I really think and feel that way about things, or is that something that somebody has given me? So in some way, these heavy energies, whatever they may be, whether they're traumas or whether they're entities or whatever, they unlock something within the person so that eventually they're in service to the highest good. They're in service to evolution, to transformation, to awakening. And they can only exist if the frequency of the person is resonating at the same frequency. This is what you were saying, that you realize that the frequency of fear is a frequency that they can attach to. Most people, they either go into a lower frequency energy of their own, whether it's the fear, whether it, and this is why when we're in heavy processes, we can be, meaning traumas, grief, we can be more vulnerable to those energies because our own energy field, we're vibrating at a denser frequency. So these denser frequencies or heavier frequency energies, it's like they're magnetized. It's called the electromagnetic field for a reason. And you nailed it when you said that there was
very manipulative.
It's manipulative. Yeah, they can be.
These things are manipulating people and they don't even know it.
Well, they don't know it, but that is also a part of the process of sovereignty, because once people start to realize that maybe I need to start taking radical responsibility for how I think, for how I feel, for how I act, for how I heal. And, this journey begins where, whether it's in meditation, whether it's for me, working through the trauma, through sensation is something that we haven't been taught, because these situations are stored and lodged in the body, but more than in the body, they're in the energetic field, right? So the energetic field is like plasma. And if you can imagine like a print, say a handprint or a trauma that hasn't been processed, and it sits like a print in the field. And if we don't process and unravel and allow the sensations, allow the energy to move around that trauma, which is a whole other conversation, then that print stays there and it continues to attract things that are a vibrational match to that, hence the entity or whatever. When I say that Jesus Christ had it mastered, is because he knew the secret, which is when you, rather than pulling something out of somebody or flicking something away or getting rid of it, when you do the opposite, and that is you transform the highest frequency energy, the highest frequency of love, the highest frequency of light with strength and with commitment. What is your name? Tell me your name. And you come in there with your high frequency energy, and you through that telepathy, basically forcing your cousin, was it your cousin?
Yeah.
You're basically forcing your cousin in their energy field to resonate and vibrate at a higher frequency. When that person's frequency raises, that entity is like, oh shit, it can't attach anymore. So what you're doing, and when I said JC was a master of this, because the hands-on healing, he wasn't going in and pulling things out of people and getting rid of. He was reprogramming their energetic field, their body, with the highest frequencies of love and the highest frequencies of light. But you have to be focused. You have to believe it. You can't just go, I wonder if this is happening. It's like you have to be strong and centered and sovereign. This is what it is to work shamanically. You can't wobble. You can't be like, I wonder if this works. It's like, it's working, and you command it. And then that energy, however it's representing and showing up for that person, has one of two choices in that moment. It either has to transform to meet that person's highest frequency, and in that way, in that moment, the magic happens because it's liberated. You've not only helped your cousin or your friend or your client, you've also been in service to a soul that was trapped, and that's beautiful. So they either have to meet that higher frequency and be transformed, or if they're not ready, because everything has free will, they've got to go. Catch you later, come back when you're ready. So for me...
And this thing told me who I was, too. And I agreed. Because it was like, John, you're here to sit on your feelings. That's why you met anything, love and light, all this positive stuff. But I kept going back to, what is your name? She'd be like, don't try anything tricky, John. I know you're very smart. And this is what my cousin's repeating. I know you're very smart. Don't try anything tricky. And this goes on and on. So it's like, it was very interesting. But at the end, what you said, naturally, I just kept saying, what is your name? What is your name? After all those questions from this thing.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
There are ways of working to, if somebody's really struggling in that process, there are ways to move that energy on so that they can come back to their center. Because, I was talking before about soul retrieval. That's probably a whole other conversation, but this is why soul retrieval is so important as well. Because whenever we have a trauma, even a tiny trauma, even like falling on your bum when you're a kid and nobody picks you up and you cry, you go into a shock. Even that is enough for just a little fragment of the soul to leave the body. Why does it leave the body? Because it looks for somewhere it feels safe to hang out, to hide, until it feels like it's safe to return to the body. But if you don't actually call the parts and the pieces back and command that the body is safe, then these little parts and pieces will hang out either in the depths of the cosmos, often at your mother star, or they go back to the earth where the trauma happened, or back to the earth where you were born. And as a result of that, you are vulnerable and sensitive to entities. So if somebody came to me, like your beautiful cousin who'd been through all that trauma, the first thing I would do would be a soul retrieval for them to get them back into their center, into their vitality. And then actually, even from doing that process, over time, very quickly, things will start to appear for them in their dreams. Opportunities will appear to do deeper healing work. It kind of opens the pathway. The universe, life opens the pathway for the true healing to really begin. And a really simple thing that you can do, a very simple soul retrieval that you can do for somebody if you feel like they need it and it's coming from your heart and coming from love, is you can have some food that the child or the person likes, and you blow into the food 3 times with their name, and we use the word humpwe, or you can say return. You seal it with 3 breaths, and you command that their soul comes back, and then you give it to them to eat. That's a really beautiful and quick way to help somebody that's that is in a that needs a very quick soul retrieval. There's deeper processes and practices that are needed for deeper things, but that definitely works, and that's a really good one to do for children, especially if you're noticing that your child is having a lot of temper tantrums, is like off with the fairies all the time, is often having accidents or traumatic processes. You need to do a soul retrieval for them if you can.
Well, Jemmita, we could probably sit here and talk for another couple hours, but I better get off here and do this other show here in a few minutes. But I mean, how do we find you? And if people want to look you up and so forth, where do we get that information?
Yeah, you can find me on anchoringthelight.com. That's my website. Instagram is the same, at Anchoring the Light. YouTube, at Anchoring the Light as well. And what I would love, just as we're talking today and what we're sharing with your viewers, I would love to give your viewers a gift if they would like. It's called Be the Crystal, and it's shamanic resilience training for empaths. So it's really learning how to work with energy, how to work with your own energetic field, how to turn your sensitivity into a superpower. And it's a month-long course. It's normally $333 US, but I'd love to give it as a gift to your listeners if it's helpful. All you need to do with that is you just send to my Instagram, the DM at Anchoring the Light. You just send the word resilience, and you'll get full access to that training. Resilience.
Yeah, I just went on here and followed you. So it's Anchoring the Light.
Yeah,
is what to look up for all of Jemmita's information. And she's shamanic apprentice, medicine woman, and the retreats. Tell me a little bit about the retreats. I mean, Peru, do you like the Peru ceremonies? Do you protect yourself there? I've always had a conflicting information, because if you hook up with the wrong people there, and people are open, they could be some snatchers there or something. I don't know. How do you deal with that kind of stuff in Peru?
If you hook up with the wrong people anywhere, you're going to be in trouble. But no, I've been taking groups to Peru since 2013. The family that I work with, we have my very close family. My Maestro Puma is actually very well known around the world. He's huge on the Shift Network as well. And he doesn't, I was one of his original students, so there's only a handful of us that he works with on that level. So it's a real blessing to be with him. But anyone that knows me, and if you come do any work with me, you'll know that the thing that I am most particular about is the impeccability of the spaces that I facilitate, or that anybody that I am working with facilitates. So these journeys are profound, and there is not a single person, not one, over all the years that hasn't had a completely life-changing experience. And from the feedback that we get, people say that it's beyond anything that they could imagine. So everything that I do, I'm extremely reverent, and I'm very, and you know why? It's, again, a conversation for another time, but it's through having experienced not awesome spaces experiences that left me in pieces, on the verge of psychosis, one ceremony for 6 months. And that's how I met my first Andean maestros, was because they pulled me back from that. So I'm very passionate about, and that's what I teach people to do in the shamanic apprenticeship, Wilkasuyu. It's working with the medicine of cacao, but it's really about facilitating transformational spaces and ceremonial spaces, because no judgment, but I think there's a lot of stuff going on out there at the moment that's just blowing people to pieces, and it's not helpful. So, these spaces can be life-changing when they're done in the right way. So, and the Reset and Rise retreats, which are around the world, are amazing. That's the way that I work with medicine has changed since 2020 because our nervous systems are different, and exactly what we were talking about at the beginning of our chat about how people are having spontaneous awakenings and people don't need much. It's very different. We have to work with the nervous system differently and with care. And when we do that, again, the medicines were never really used for healing. That's a relatively new thing. There is stuff that now needs to be worked on and healed, but really they're there to remember. They're there to access the wisdom that you and I have been talking about and bring it through and make it count. I mean, that really, at the end of the day, this life, I think for me, you just want to make it count. Right? It's
absolutely. Just want to make
just
sure I'm doing what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah.
Whatever that is. But I say that, if you're looking to go to Peru, I've had some experiences with friends and so forth. I haven't been to Peru personally, but it's very important. So if you're looking to go to Peru, I think you look up Anchoring the Light. And this has been Jemmita, the medicine woman. I appreciate you coming on the show. It's been a great conversation. And I am John Edmonds Kozma, the CEO of Bang Productions. Thank you.
Thank you, John.